The monitors in room 304 of Mercy General Hospital beeped steadily as Dr. Sarah Mitchell reviewed the chart at the foot of William Harrison's bed. Terminal pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 3 to 4 weeks remaining, at best 2 days earlier. The 76-year-old retired zoologist had refused further treatment, opting instead for palliative care and, in his own words, a dignified exit on my own terms. What Dr. Mitchell could not have anticipated was the phone call she would receive the following morning, or how it would challenge everything she understood about the natural world. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Thompson," Dr. Mitchell said into her office phone, her free hand nervously adjusting her glasses. "In fact, it's completely unprecedented. What you're suggesting simply isn't possible within hospital regulations." "I understand your concerns, Doctor," replied Robert Thompson, director of the Oakdale Wildlife Sanctuary. "But I need you to understand something, too. William Harrison isn't just our founder. For 30 years, he hand-raised dozens of orphaned big cats, including Simba. Their connection defies conventional explanation. Mr. Thompson, you're asking me to allow a full-grown male lion into a hospital room. I sympathize with Mr. Harrison's condition, but, quote, Simba is 22 years old, Thompson interrupted. That's elderly for a lion. He's been vaccinated, regularly examined, and has never shown aggression toward humans. Since William's hospitalization, he's refused food and spends his days pacing and calling out. The sanctuary veterinarian is concerned for his health. It's still a wild animal, Dr. Mitchell insisted. With all due respect, Doctor, William has days left. This is his final request. We've made arrangements with the hospital administration and security. We'll bring Simba through the service entrance at 2 a.m. when the corridors are empty. 4 experienced handlers will be present at all times. We've secured special liability waivers and insurance for this single, brief visit. Dr. Mitchell sighed, glancing at William's latest scans illuminated on her computer screen. The hospital administrator approved this? Quote, call her yourself. We've been working on the arrangements for 3 days. The following night, Dr. Mitchell found herself standing in William Harrison's dimly lit hospital room, watching as 4 men carefully guided a surprisingly calm male lion through the door. Despite her medical training and years of emergency room experience, nothing had prepared her for this moment. The massive cat moved with deliberate grace, his amber eyes immediately fixing on the frail figure in the hospital bed. William Harrison, who had been drifting in and out of consciousness throughout the day, opened his eyes. A smile transformed his pain-lined face as he weakly raised a hand. Simba, he whispered, you came. What happened next astonished everyone present. The lion approached the bed slowly, handlers tensed and ready to intervene. But instead of any aggression, Simba gently placed his massive head against William's outstretched hand. Then, carefully, with what could only be described as tenderness, he climbed partially onto the bed and nestled his head against the elderly man's chest. William's withered hand stroked the lion's mane as tears streamed down his face. My boy, he murmured. My beautiful boy. The handlers exchanged bewildered glances. Even they, who had worked with Simba for years, had never witnessed behavior like this. Dr. Mitchell stood transfixed, medical clipboard forgotten in her hands as she watched the enormous predator behave with the gentleness of a house cat. William found Simba as a cub, Robert Thompson explained quietly, moving to stand beside her. Poachers had killed his mother. The cub was malnourished, infected with parasites, and had a badly broken leg. Any other conservationist would have euthanized him. But William hand-fed that cub every 2 hours for weeks, slept beside him on the floor of his cabin, set and reset that leg until it healed properly. Dr. Mitchell nodded, unable to tear her eyes from the scene before her. How long were they together? Quote, 15 years. Day and night. Before William's retirement 7 years ago. Even after that, he visited weekly until his diagnosis 3 months ago. For 2 hours, the lion remained with William, sometimes shifting position but always maintaining physical contact. The elderly man drifted in and out of sleep, but each time he woke, his hand would immediately seek out the lion's mane, as if reassuring himself that Simba was still there. Dr. Mitchell checked William's vitals periodically, noting with surprise that his blood pressure had stabilized and his pain indicators had decreased significantly. The sense of peace in the room was palpable. As dawn approached, Thompson gently suggested it was time to return Simba to the sanctuary. The handlers prepared to separate the pair, a task they approached with visible apprehension. Wait, William said, his voice stronger than it had been in days. There's an envelope in the bedside drawer. Robert, please. Thompson retrieved a sealed envelope with Dr. Mitchell's name written on it. She opened it, finding a notarized legal document inside. I've made arrangements, William explained, his hand still buried in Simba's mane. I don't want to die here. I want to go home to my cabin at the sanctuary. I've signed a release of liability for the hospital. My lawyer has all the paperwork for hospice care to be provided there. Dr. Mitchell scanned the document, then looked at the patient. Medical protocol dictated she should refuse. Moving a terminal patient to an uncontrolled environment went against best practices. But as she watched William's face, more peaceful and alive than she'd seen since his admission, she found her professional objections giving way to a deeper understanding. I'll need to make some calls, she said finally. And there are protocols even for compassionate release. But I'll do everything I can. William nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you. He turned his attention back to Simba, whispering something into the lion's ear that made the great cat press even closer to him. Later that morning, as she completed the paperwork for William's transfer to home hospice care, Dr. Mitchell found herself questioning the rigid boundaries between humans and animals that her scientific education had instilled. What she had witnessed in room 304 suggested a depth of connection that transcended conventional understanding, a bond formed through years of companionship, trust, and what could only be described as love. 3 days later, a specially equipped medical transport arrived at the gates of Oakdale Wildlife Sanctuary. The rural facility, nestled on 200 acres of protected woodland 2 hours outside of Minneapolis, had been William Harrison's life's work. What had begun in the 1980s as a small rehabilitation center for injured native wildlife had evolved over 4 decades into one of the most respected big cat sanctuaries in North America. Dr. Mitchell had insisted on accompanying William personally, monitoring his condition throughout the journey. Though hospital administration had initially balked at the unconventional discharge, the ironclad legal documents provided by William's attorney, coupled with the growing media attention as news of the lion's hospital visit leaked, had ultimately smoothed the process. Almost home. William, Dr. Mitchell said gently as the ambulance followed the winding gravel road toward the sanctuary's main compound. Her patient had been quiet throughout the journey, conserving his strength, but his eyes opened at her words. Thank you for this, he whispered. I didn't want my last view to be a hospital ceiling. As the ambulance approached a modest cabin set apart from the main sanctuary buildings, Dr. Mitchell noticed a small gathering of people waiting. Thompson had explained that the sanctuary's small staff, most of whom had worked with William for decades, wanted to welcome him home. What she hadn't expected was the unmistakable sound of lions calling to each other in the distance, a chorus that intensified as the vehicle came to a stop. They know, William said, a weak smile crossing his face. Animals always know. The transfer from ambulance to cabin proceeded with careful efficiency. Inside, Dr. Mitchell was surprised to find a space already prepared with hospital-grade equipment. An adjustable bed, oxygen concentrator, IV stands, and monitoring devices seamlessly integrated into the rustic living area. Large windows offered views of the surrounding woods and, towering in the distance, the sanctuary's enclosures. Hospice delivered everything yesterday, Thompson explained. Noticing her surprised expression, we have a nurse arriving within the hour. She's worked with wildlife rehabilitators before and understands the unique situation. Dr. Mitchell nodded, impressed by the thoroughness of the arrangements. And Simba? She asked. His enclosure connects to the cabin through a specially designed passage William installed years ago. There's a series of safety doors and protocols. When William was actively working with him, Simba would come into a secured portion of the cabin daily. After settling William and ensuring his medication pump was properly functioning, Dr. Mitchell stepped onto the cabin's covered porch with Thompson. In the fading afternoon light, the sanctuary had a peaceful quality, interrupted only by occasional calls from its residents. What will happen to them all? She asked. After William. Thompson sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. William established an endowment years ago. The sanctuary will continue. But Simba, he trailed off, looking toward the largest enclosure visible through the trees. We're concerned. He's barely eaten since William stopped visiting. Lions are resilient, but when they form strong bonds, they can decline rapidly when those bonds are broken. Inside, the hospice nurse had arrived and was reviewing William's charts. Martha Edwards was in her 60s, with a no-nonsense manner that softened when she addressed her patient. So, I understand there's another caregiver in the picture, she said to William, adjusting his pillows. When do I get to meet him? Quote, for the first time since leaving the hospital. William chuckled. Soon, he promised. After sunset, that's when he's most active. As darkness fell, Dr. Mitchell prepared to return to the city, having confirmed that William was stable and in good hands. Before leaving, she checked his vitals one final time. Your numbers are better than they've been in weeks, she noted with surprise. Blood pressure normalized, heart rate steady, oxygen saturation improved. Being home is the best medicine, William replied. Then, with a conspirator's smile, he added, but I'd appreciate if you could stay just a little longer. There's something I'd like you to witness. An hour later, as stars appeared in the clear Minnesota sky, Thompson entered the cabin and approached William's bed. Ready? He asked softly. William nodded, his eyes bright with anticipation. Thompson moved to a control panel mounted on the wall and pressed a series of buttons. Dr. Mitchell heard mechanical sounds, safety mechanisms disengaging, and then the soft rumble of a large door sliding open somewhere within the cabin structure. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, padding silently into the room, came Simba. The lion moved with deliberate grace, his massive head swinging gently from side to side as he surveyed the room and its occupants. When his amber eyes found William, he made a soft chuffing sound, a greeting Dr. Mitchell recognized from nature documentaries, a sound big cats made only when completely at ease. The hospice nurse, to her credit, remained perfectly still in her chair. Though her knuckles whitened as she gripped its arms, Thompson stood close to the control panel, ready to activate emergency protocols. But Dr. Mitchell found herself completely transfixed as the enormous predator approached William's bed with what could only be described as tenderness. Hey, old friend, William whispered as Simba gently rested his head on the edge of the bed. With trembling hands, he stroked the lion's mane. I told you we'd come home. What happened next defied everything Dr. Mitchell had been taught about wild animals. With extraordinary care, The lion eased himself onto the reinforced bed frame, arranging his massive body alongside William's frail form, mindful of the medical equipment. Finally, he rested his head against William's chest, a deep rumbling purr filling the room. His heartbeat, William explained, seeing Dr. Mitchell's astonished expression. Lions can hear heartbeats from great distances. It's how they select prey. The weakest have irregular rhythms. Simba's been listening to mine since he was a cub. This is remarkable, Dr. Mitchell managed. I've never seen anything like it. Most people haven't, William agreed, his fingers working through Simba's mane. We underestimate the emotional capacity of animals. Their ability to form bonds. To grieve. To remember. Simba hasn't forgotten a single person who's ever mistreated him or shown him kindness. For the next hour, Dr. Mitchell witnessed something few humans ever had. The complex relationship between a man and a predator that most would consider incapable of the gentleness she now observed. Eventually, knowing she had a long drive ahead, she reluctantly prepared to leave. I'll be back to check on you in 2 days, she told William, squeezing his hand. But the hospice team can reach me any time if needed. William nodded, looking more peaceful than she had seen him since his diagnosis. Thank you for understanding, he said simply. Most doctors wouldn't have. When Dr. Mitchell returned to the sanctuary 2 days later, she found the atmosphere around William's cabin transformed. Word had spread about the extraordinary reunion, and a small media encampment had formed at the sanctuary's main entrance. Conservation groups, animal behaviorists, and wildlife photographers had all requested access. Thompson had denied most, protecting William's privacy, but had allowed a single documentary crew from National Geographic to film from a respectful distance. He's having a good day, Martha, the hospice nurse, reported as Dr. Mitchell entered the cabin. Slept through the night with minimal pain medication. Even ate a little breakfast. William was sitting up in bed, looking out the large window where the morning sun illuminated the autumn foliage. Beside him, impossibly, lay Simba. The lion's massive body took up half the reinforced bed, his tawny coat gleaming in the sunlight. One large paw draped protectively across William's blanket-covered legs. You're still here, Dr. Mitchell said to the lion, unable to hide her amazement. William smiled weakly. He's barely left my side. The sanctuary staff have to bring his food here. He gestured to a large metal bowl in the corner, containing what appeared to be several pounds of raw meat, though he's eating more than he has in months. Dr. Mitchell conducted her examination with Simba watching her every move. The lion's amber eyes tracked her hands as she checked William's pulse, blood pressure, and oxygen levels. What might have been terrifying instead felt like being observed by an attentive family member. Your vital signs are remarkably stable, she noted with surprise. And your pain levels? Quote, present, but manageable, William replied. Having him here helps more than any medication. Over the next week, Dr. Mitchell visited daily, documenting William's condition. What she observed defied medical explanation, though the cancer continued its inevitable course. William's decline was nothing like the rapid deterioration she had expected. He remained alert, engaged, and in significantly less pain than comparable hospice patients. More remarkable still was Simba's behavior. The lion had established a routine, spending most of each day and night with William, occasionally retreating through the special passage to his enclosure for short periods before returning. The sanctuary staff reported that his health had visibly improved, his coat regaining its luster, his appetite returning to normal. He knows, William told her during her 8th visit, animals understand death better than we do. They don't fear it the way humans do. That evening, Thompson shared decades-old video footage of William and Simba. The earliest clips showed a bearded, younger William cradling a tiny lion cub with a splinted leg. Later footage captured their extraordinary journey. The cub growing into an adolescent, then a magnificent adult, with William always by his side. The easy trust between them, built over thousands of hours together, was evident in every frame. Conservation was William's public mission, Thompson explained. But Simba was personal. When poachers killed the mother, William was the one who found her body. The cub was hiding nearby, severely injured. Any veterinarian would have recommended euthanasia. The leg was shattered, infection setting in, but William refused. He said he saw something in those eyes. On the 10th day, Dr. Mitchell arrived to find William noticeably weaker. Martha reported he had refused food and required increased pain management overnight. Simba lay beside him as always. But the lion's behavior had subtly changed. He was more alert, his massive head raised often to study William's face, occasionally making soft vocalizations that sounded almost like inquiries. "I think we're near the end," William whispered when she checked his vital signs. "Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow." Dr. Mitchell nodded, medical training warring with emotion. "Would you like me to stay?" Quote, "Please," he said. "And could you do something else for me?" He gestured weakly toward a worn leather journal on the nearby table. "My observations. 40 years of work with big cats. The last entries are about this. About Simba's behavior during my illness. It may help others understand what I've always known about their emotional capacity." That night, William's condition deteriorated rapidly. His breathing became labored, his periods of consciousness briefer. Through it all, Simba remained vigilant, occasionally licking William's hand with his rough tongue, a gesture that always seemed to momentarily ease the dying man's distress. Shortly after midnight, William opened his eyes with sudden clarity. "Robert," he called softly to Thompson, who had remained at the cabin. "Activate the contingency plan we discussed. You remember?" Quote, Thompson nodded, his expression solemn. "I remember. We're prepared, just as you wanted." William turned to Dr. Mitchell, his voice barely audible. "Simba is 22, elderly for a lion. When I'm gone." He paused, gathering strength. "The plan is to allow him to live out his days here, in this cabin and his connected enclosure, his familiar territory. No attempts to pair him with other lions or move him elsewhere. Promise me you'll help ensure that happens." "I promise," she said, understanding now why he had wanted her to witness this extraordinary bond. A medical professional's testimony would carry weight with whatever authorities might question the arrangement. As dawn approached, William's breathing became more erratic. The monitors showed his heart rate slowing, his oxygen levels dropping despite supplemental oxygen. Dr. Mitchell administered additional morphine for comfort, though William appeared to be in little pain. What happened in those final moments would forever change Dr. Mitchell's understanding of consciousness, connection, and the capacity of animals to comprehend death. As William's breathing grew shallower, Simba rose to a sitting position beside him. The lion's eyes never left William's face as he made a series of soft vocalizations unlike anything the medical team had heard before. Not growls or roars, but gentle, almost musical sounds. William opened his eyes one last time, lifted a trembling hand to Simba's mane, and whispered something that only the lion could hear. Then, with a peaceful sigh, William Harrison's hand fell still. His final breath exhaled gently. The monitors flatlined. Dr. Mitchell moved forward to confirm death but paused as Simba lowered his massive head to rest his forehead against William's. The lion remained motionless for several long minutes, creating a tableau of such profound grief and dignity that no one in the room could speak. Then, with gentle deliberation, Simba lay down beside William's body, positioning himself as he had every night for the past week. His large paw resting protectively across William's chest, the lion closed his eyes. A deep rumbling purr filling the silence of the cabin. "Should we?" Martha began uncertainly. "No," Thompson said quietly. "Let him say goodbye in his own way." For 3 hours, Simba remained with William's body, occasionally rising to nuzzle his face or lick his hand before settling back down. When he finally stood and walked slowly through the passage to his enclosure, the sanctuary staff were able to attend to William's remains according to his wishes. In the days that followed, Dr. Mitchell helped document the extraordinary case for both medical and wildlife conservation journals. The National Geographic documentary, titled The Lion's Vigil, would go on to win awards and change public perception about the emotional lives of big cats. As for Simba, he lived another year in the cabin and attached enclosure, cared for by the sanctuary staff who had known both him and William for decades. Visitors reported that he would often sit for hours, gazing at the bed where William had spent his final days. His behavior neither depressed nor agitated, but reflective, as if remembering. When Simba eventually passed peacefully in his sleep at the remarkable age of 23, he was buried, according to William's instructions, in a quiet corner of the sanctuary beneath an oak tree. It was the same spot where, years earlier, a young lion cub with a broken leg had first looked into the eyes of the man who would become his lifelong companion.